And let me go back to the migration topic and how to deal with the demographic winter, because that's the other part of the story. Okay. So how to deal with the fertility rate, for example.
So that's the $1 million question anyway. Nobody has a clear pattern which could save the fertility rates and the society as it is without having migration. So it's a real intellectual trap for me. No migration, but committed to maintain the level of the population of the country. So how we can manage it?
Prime Minister, I would like to know more about your cultural view and your cultural strategy for Hungary. I'm from Argentina. Javier Milei is leading a cultural revolution, a cultural war, but we have a problem with our university field as in the rest of the world. So the university field is dominated by leftists, globalists, and the woke agenda. I think that in the USA is the same. So what can we do with that? What did you do with that?
It's a marathon. So there is no solution in a year. So first of all, we have to understand where we are. So, and how is in Switzerland?
Well, we're watching everything attentively and we feel vindicated. I mean, finally they start to realize that the European Union is an intellectual misconception. I mean, it took so long that everyone else noticed.
And what about the German election outcome and the new government? What is the Swiss opinion on that?
Well, not so optimistic, but probably slightly more optimistic than with the last government.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Okay.
But I mean, it's important for us, of course, for economical reasons.
Yeah, but this government changed dramatically everything.
To ask you, what do you think about the outcome of the German election at the future
I
of Germany?
I met the Chancellor a week ago in Tirana. First meeting. He was positive. Taking into account what is the opinion in Brussels on Hungary, to have a good opinion and positive mood in Berlin is surprising, a positive surprise. He said that he would like to modify the line on migration, but of course what I'm doing is too harsh. But I said this is the only way. If you would like to defend your country, there is only one single regulation. If you don't follow that, you will fail. The simple regulation is nobody can step into the territory of the country without getting a permission. You have to wait outside.
Mr. Prime Minister, what do you make of the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, coming out seemingly out of the blue and saying, we need to stop this migration, it will create an island of strangers? I said, am I listening to Mr. Orban or is that Keir Starmer?
Yeah, but you know, so it's the migration issue is so complicated. Legally, it's very simple. You know, to cross the border line without a permission is a crime. Full point. It's over. The problem is that migration is a concept of changing the society as such.
Yeah.
It's a kind of replacement of the original native-born voters with somebody else. And this is, you know, without being involved into any conspiracy theory, this is a well-detailed plan of the left. Because, okay, my understanding of the history is probably not as sophisticated as yours, but if I understand correctly, the last 150 years of the European, including UK anyway, the European politics, it's about a competition of two tribes. One is those who think that we should stay in the traditional frame and value system of Europe as it was. Nation, freedom, Christianity, that's all. So whatever we have, the program on economy, whatever, but this is the frame. But there's another tradition in the European politics, that's the left, to change it, to step over the nation, the family, you know, the Christianity, all that kind of things, and we would like to create a new society. And these two big powers are competing each other in the last 150 years in Europe. One called Christian, the other one is, let's say, progressive, yeah? But now getting the newcomers, and they are not Christians at all, they're basically Muslims. So the left think that these guys will never vote for the right, for the Christians, never. So it means that instead of continuing that kind of competition, which was basically not bad for Europe anyway, right and left and so on, now they involve new voters which totally change that kind of structure. It's over. So accepting that culture, the Christians and the right cannot vote anymore again because of the high number of migrants who got the citizenship, then family unification. The number is growing, and they will never vote for the right. To where they will vote, that's a question. To the left, or they will create their own party. That's the biggest question of the future, but definitely not voting for the right. So this is what's going on. It's a plan. So migration is not just a problem of legal system or demography or employment. It's the basic structure, the livestock structure of your society, and the left started to change it. But we arrived to a point when it became obvious for them that now it's dangerous. Probably it's a good concept in their mind for long term, but day by day, because of the crime rate is going, because terrorist attacks are growing, and the anxiety of the society against this whole thing is growing, the people feel more and more alien themselves in their own country, So it's a political factor even for the left.
Yep.
I think this is the reason why my colleague decided to follow my track, sorry to say that, to follow the fascist, feudalistic, whatsoever Hungarian pattern, but they did.
But do you think it's too late for some of those countries? I mean, for the UK,
over.
it seems like it's completely over.
UK is a different issue. To understand UK is the most difficult thing, because it's 100 years ago that was the biggest empire of the world. So how to behave with those who does not belong to the native Christian core of the British society, but joined as part of the other territories, and how they are managed and could be part of the kingdom, that's something different than the continent of Europe. So I don't have an opinion how UK will continue. But in the continent, the game is over. No way back.
May I ask you, Prime Minister?
Sorry to say that.
Yeah.
Poor France and
But
Germany.
what do you think that actually means? I mean, what do those countries look like in 15 years?
If I understand correctly, the migrants will occupy basically the urban areas, the major cities. That's first. Second, spiritually, they are stronger than the urban original inhabitants.
Yeah.
Because they believe God, they believe family, they believe their community. Look at Erdogan example is the best one. Yeah. Erdogan was supported by higher percent in Germany on the referendum of the constitution than in Turkey.
Yeah.
That's so simple, So I think this new element in our life, spiritually stronger than the original structure they arrived in. That's the problem. That's the reason why I'm so happy that Hungary has 0, 0, 0. We don't have migrants, not illegal, no migration at all. So we stopped it.
So what about countries like Germany? I was with Alice earlier. They've already got millions of migrants. She's getting a lot of backlash for talking about, I think it's called remigration, whatever term she uses. So what's the solution for countries that have gone down that path for so long, unlike Hungary? Is there a way back from having all these immigrants?
I'm just simply happy that it's not my job. But I'm fighting for not to get the same dilemma, because it's the biggest dilemma, spiritually, morally, especially for a Christian, what to deal with. And I'm so thankful to the God that it's not my political challenge. So what I'm doing to preserve the situation here, not to have that question, never, for the Hungarians.
Do you think it's possible for other nations who are indeed in this position, if we're talking about, for example, Germany and Sweden, before the next half of this century, they will have a minority of the European population. Do you think it's possible to really put a halt to mass migration and even start maybe remigration within the framework of the European Union? Do you think that reforming the European Union is possible, or do you think that the construct, which obviously very much did away with Christian values, is even possible to reform?
Okay, when we speak about demography and the impact of migration, we have to understand that they will concentrate always on the urban areas. So it does not count what is their rate on national basis, because it says nothing. The question is how they are concentrated on urban areas. And the majority in urban areas will arrive soon, sooner than we expect. If you look at the sociological facts in Vienna, which is the closest country, we see the process. How many percentage of the young guys going first time to the school belonging to the migration community or belonging to the original community, so it's obvious. So it's not a nationwide problem first, it's just a regional one. To change the European Union, I think the European Union will change its mind on migration quite soon. I have various and many impressions collecting at meetings recently in the last 6 months. Prior to the Prime Minister Summit of European Union, we regularly have a meeting of anti-migration countries. Denmark, Italy, okay, Hungary and the others, but they are the main Westerners. And they are getting more and more nervous. And they are requesting more and more radically change of the policy of Brussels on that. I try to educate them and to say, guys, this is not helpful. But they do it, they press, and some good regulations are coming out. But basically, they cannot, it's not a, this move is not a game changer. The game changer is only what I say, rebellion. Rebellion. A rebel against the European regulation. Hungary is doing that. So what is the law now in the European Union is totally against what we are doing here. So I have to pay every day, 1 million euro as a fine, as a punishment, because I don't follow the pro-migration policy of the Commission. So that's going on, but it's a simple rebellion. And that's my suggestion to everybody. Rebellion. Reform will not help. Even they will accept certain push coming from the prime ministers, but they will never change dramatically the structure of what we need.
But you have an absolute majority, and I wonder what your opinion is on other European countries, most European countries in fact, where the right wing is not able to get an absolute majority. Would you recommend to the leaders of those parties to form coalitions anyway and to have watered down policies, or to say, no, we're going to stay in the opposition?
It's not possible. I was talking with FPO, what happened in Austria.
Yeah, but there are some examples what you have just quoted, but there are some other kind of examples, like in Dutch,
in the Netherlands,
Netherlands, in Sweden. So, without mentioning any concrete countries, because I would not like to criticize anybody, but the fact is that those parties who moved into coalition with others, sooner or later has given up, or have given up their original radical position on migration. So I have rather negative experiences on that.
But do you think that the European Union as a structure, which we consider in Switzerland, or some consider in Switzerland, as an intellectual misconception, it doesn't work because everybody's responsible for everybody and nobody's responsible for something specific. I mean, is the EU, how can the EU genuinely survive? Or how many years do you give the EU in its current structure to still work?
Few.
Few.
So we are in the last phase now. So. Okay. The European Union, for many reasons, finally lost its competitiveness. So the only reason why people are ready, members are ready to accept crazy regulations of the EU institutions just because of the financial transfers. But because losing of the competitiveness, less and less money could be redistributed. So the financial transfer is not a keeping together factor anymore. It's reducing. I see it in the discussion coming from for the next 7 years term budget. And if you are not competitive, you have only one option. You have to make yourself competitive again. Otherwise, you will continue to come down. And what is the way to do it? You need strong leadership, which convince the majority of the people or made it acceptable for the majority, the economic reforms, which are sometimes painful. In Hungary in 2010, I introduced some hugely painful reforms, changes. And the people were so desperate because of the previous socialist government, they have accepted it. Not because they agreed, probably, just because there was no other option, you know. And the previous socialist government destroyed everything. So, and I convinced them to accept it. Let's make a chance for me 2 years to introduce these reforms, which probably painful, but in 2 years' time, you will see the results. And they let the chance for me to happen, and I did so. So that's the reason why the Hungarian economic structure is totally different than any others in the West European societies or European Union. It's not as obvious as the migration or war or gender or pro-family issues, but even the economic structure basically different from the other European ones. But that's another story. So I have some experience how to run dramatic economic reforms to make your country more competitive. But that kind of leadership is lacking in Europe at this moment. So I don't see any country, and not the Brazilian institutions neither, to be able to reform the structure of the European economy to make it more competitive. So, if they cannot do that, what is the other option? First, to say intellectual misconception and go home. That's one. But they don't do that.
That's the Swiss view.
Okay. But they don't do that. But they have another answer. Okay, if you're not able to run reforms for competitiveness, let's get money somehow and somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And it's loans. It's debts. So now the final phase of the European Union is common indebtedness. This is the beginning of the end. That's how I see it. And we do it now.
And let me go back to the migration topic and how to deal with the demographic winter, because that's the other part of the story. Okay. So how to deal with the fertility rate, for example.
So that's the $1 million question anyway. Nobody has a clear pattern which could save the fertility rates and the society as it is without having migration. So it's a real intellectual trap for me. No migration, but committed to maintain the level of the population of the country. So how we can manage it? Nobody has answer to that. At least I try to find an answer. That's the difference. The others don't invest energy to find an answer. They just simply accept, okay, the only solution is migration. That's what they do. But I don't accept it, and I feel by heart it's not a good answer. So we must have another one. So I'm looking for the other one. That's what we call the family policy here in Hungary, which we introduced 10 years ago. It went quite well, very well. Then COVID erupted, and the COVID pushed us back. So now we are in a better shape than we were, but not as good as we reached already, and not as good far as we should be. Mm-hmm. So that's the reality. But I'm still, but you know what I have got intellectually is that for a good family policy you need 1 or 2 decades permanently. Yeah. And I'm just pushing. So I did so maverick kind. Unusual things you can't imagine. Just now we introduced the no pay tax for the mothers who has at least 2 kids, regardless how old the kids are.
Sounds perfect.
So even they could 30 or 40.
Maybe I should move.
Because we think that the ladies fulfill some of their contribution to the society by the kids. So if they are ready to go to work, don't pay any income tax till the end of their life. So that's very strange, nowhere else. Or, I don't give subsidies to the families because at the same time we need labor. So I combine the labor and the pro-family policy, which means the tax allowances is the way how I can support the families, Then, we have the problem with the high rate of divorces, Because, even we are a Christian country, but people are not convinced so much to follow personally the abstract Christian values, So the divorce rate is high. So that's the reason why I concentrate not only on the families, I concentrate on the mothers. Because if after there is a divorce and the kids remain with the mother, there is no financial background for her. So that we're not just targeting on the family, but we have special policies targeting on the mothers, you know. So altogether we have 30 instruments we use to support the families.
You can move the money from the cost of immigration. Last time I was here, I was with President Novak, who's leading that battle globally. It's like, is it a fair argument to make the money that you'd save by kind of easing up on immigration, you can invest in places like this to solve the problem?
Far more than that.
Foundationally solve the
yeah,
problem.
of course. I'm, all in all, I'm convinced that the most expensive thing is migration.
Mm-hmm. More than $1 million a day.
More, far. Yeah. So when I'm attacked by the opposition, why I am doing that and pay the fine to the Europeans, said, guys, it's even cheaper now. Make a calculation. But it's cheaper financially and cheaper socially. So I'm ready to pay. Because
but Prime Minister, I can't support these family policies. You have to stop doing them, because the more my wife hears about them, she keeps saying we must move to Hungary. I'm not ready, so you have to help me. What can I do?
If you combine with the fact that family is not just perceived as a unit of taxation, but as the inherent core of the society, yes. That's the argument why we don't have inheritance tax at all.
Right. Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's philosophically, we argue philosophically, because, you know, any wealth and money which is generated were done together by the family. If the members of the family inherited something, there is no reason to be taxed, you know, because it was a common effort and achievement of the family, you know. So yeah. why we should tax them? If they decide to give it somebody else, it's okay. Some taxation is acceptable. But inside the family, if the sons or brothers, you know, why? Because family is more than just, you know, philosophy. It's an existing community, and we have to treat them like that.
Can I ask a question on?
So even I have some even more argument why you should come to Hungary.
Can I ask a question on the political?
Can't win. Even he's promo code Tanya.
So this goes back a little ways, not just the policies of the last few years, but roughly 25 years or so. When you were Prime Minister the first time, you moved the crown of St. Stephen from a museum to the center of Parliament. I'm not Hungarian, but looking at that seems like a beautiful movement that seems to have great meaning for the political order. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What's the significance of that move?
Okay. That's the most complicated element of the Hungarian, being Hungarian, you know. So first of all, the crown belongs to Christianity. And the relationship between the nation and Christianity here in Hungary is very unique. It is even written into the constitution that the Christianity has a role to preserve the nation. And if you look at the history of 1,100 years of Hungary, there were some periods when we survived as a nation just because of the Christianity. And the crown is a symbol of coming together the nation and Christianity, you know, because it's a Christian country, which is symbolized by the crown. So that's first. Second, you know, nation is a notion when you discuss and read about it in the Western philosophy and literature, looks like that something would belong to the modern age, 19th century or something, the modern nations. Yeah. But it's not the case with the Hungarians. The nation as a notion, as a concept, is back to more than 1,000 years old, for a very simple reason. Because, you know, this territory was occupied by the Hungarians by a move. So we came here to this territory 1,100 years ago as a deliberate move. We decided that from Asia we move here, we come here, and we take that territory. We took it over. And the Hungarians arrived, which means that these Hungarian guys have spoken or had spoken Hungarian language, surrounded by alien communities, no any relatives, neither culturally, neither linguistically, no DNA, you know. So we are totally alien here. So therefore, to be a Hungarian and to belong to the community, which is the nation, you know, is a concept of more than 1,000 years old here, because of the special history. So and the St. Stephen crown is a kind of testimony of that. So therefore, for Hungarians, we have the saying, still we have the crown, we have the country. It sounds stupid, because crown is just a piece of something, and the country is something else. But in the mind of the Hungarians, still we have the crown, we have the country. So therefore, the crown is so much deeply embedded in the heart and spirit of the Hungarians that it's difficult to imagine for somebody who is not belonging to our community.
No, I don't know that it's that difficult. It seems much more solid than a lot of the modern ideologies that political orders are based on these days.
So it was a big move, it was at the same time an anti-communist move, because after the Second World War, when the last Hungarian government escaped from Hungary to the West, because the Russians came in, the Soviet Union came in, the communists came in, they delivered with themselves the crown. So the crown was outside the country. Wow. It was in Fort Knox, basically, in United States, And then in the 70s, the United States decided that if the Hungarian communist government asking for that, they can give it back. And there was some legitimacy crisis of the communist leadership here, and they used that gestures to give some profile for them. So then the government of the administration of United States have given it back.
Jimmy Carter.
But
just blame Jimmy Carter.
It's got to be Carter. It's got to be Carter.
But
gave everything back.
But the communists said, okay, we need that move and gesture, but it's dangerous. Put it into a museum, in a dark corner,
Right.
So to let it out of the museum was a kind of reburn process of the crown and the conservative Christian past of Hungary. So it was a lot of discussion here, ideological one, but finally we decided to do so. It's strange a little bit because the crown is in the parliament, but the crown expressed the essence of the sovereignty of Hungary, and the sovereignty now is in the hand of parliament in the modern age. That's why we think it's possible to store there or to keep there. Everybody can see it. It's wonderful. It's really a unique piece of art. Yeah.
We have been together last year on this peace mission you had as a president of the European Council. We were together in Ukraine and in Moscow. Now we're seeing that the Russians are winning militarily this war. And it's very hard to stop someone who is winning the war. The American president said Putin is completely crazy now. What's your assessment of the situation at the moment? And specifically, what would you consider the national interest of Russia at that moment, which has to be taken into account to find a stable situation in Ukraine? Because they have no motivation at the moment to stop. I mean, they're winning, they're
Okay.
achieving their goals.
Okay. So you probably remember, because I had some report to you about my conversation with Zelensky last year, July, in Kiev.
Yeah.
My mission was to help to put together a peace, or at least ceasefire. And I never said publicly anything on that. But now probably I can do. So I tried to convince him that the time is not on your side. So you will lose more and more. So it's your interest to have a ceasefire and a peace. And if you allow me, I'm ready to convince not just you, but I'm ready to go to other places and to put together an agreement on saving more lives and so on. He rejected. He said that no, you misunderstand the situation, militarily and politically. First of all, the time is on the side of Ukraine because they will win militarily. Oh, I said, oh. And then he explained the Russians are in a hopeless situation. Oh, I said. Then he said that because my argument was that Trump will come and Trump will make a peace and you will be in a deep trouble. I said, probably will, probably not. And if yes, nobody knows what the foreign policy will be. But I said, be careful. I know this president. This is different. Probably sounds strange what he promised, but he will do it. So he's not a typical Western leader who's saying something to win the election and doing something different. No, don't misunderstand. He will do exactly what he's speaking about. So you are on the loser side, and time is not on your side. So it's your interest to have a peace as soon as we can. And he rejected. So that was my story. So back to your question. Otherwise, my experience with the president of the Russians were also a kind of rejective gesture because he said that time is on his side. But the difference is that he was right. Zelensky was not. So therefore, it was a total rejection, as you remember. Yeah. That's the reason I went to Beijing and then Mar-a-Lago and so on. Anyway, to put together something. I was not able to do that. It was too big challenge to me, but at least I tried. So my answer to your question is that I think it's an intellectual misconception. Okay? It's an intellectual misconception to think that the ceasefire or peace could come as a result of a Russian-Ukrainian negotiation. It will never happen. The peace is not coming from that source. The peace and ceasefire could come exclusively only Russian-American negotiation, whether we like it or not.
Do you believe
whether Europeans are ready to accept or not, whether the Ukrainians accept or not. Finally, the only way to make peace and agreement is a Russian-American agreement. And not only on the war, and not only on territories and border lines and whatever, but on trade, energy, investments. So it's a bigger package.
NATO enlargement.
NATO enlargement, a big package. And only the American president is the man who can put together that. Trade, NATO, all that kind of issues. So it will be a big package, and the Ukrainians are not strong enough to make that kind of deal with the Russians.
Do you think Zelensky said that time was on his side, even military, because he's counting on endless support from the EU?
I think so, definitely.
But did he actually believe it as well?
Right, that's the question.
I think, okay, there are two possibilities. He was honest or he was not honest. But I think he was. He thought seriously.
Do you think they're crazy enough, the Eurocrats, to actually build a European army? Of course, now we've seen the rearm plan from Ursula von der Leyen, where she puts together a defense fund of 800 billion euros. Do you think they'll go one step further and send Europeans to the front?
It's getting more and more complicated. So the first is the future of Ukraine. The second is the army question of Europe, and the army question of Ukraine. Okay, so it's three combining questions. So the first is, probably it sounds not very much polite to the Ukrainians, but the fact is that what was the situation prior to the war? Okay, prior to the war, we had Russia, we have NATO, and there was a buffer zone. And the buffer zone called Ukraine. That was the situation. Then the Europeans and the Americans decided, and probably convinced the Ukrainians as well, that de facto they should move ahead that Ukraine becoming member in order to become member of the Western structures. Even legally they cannot be member of NATO, but practically they will be. You know, because of weapon system, because of intelligence services, because of sharing of information. So step by step, they will become the Western security structure, militarily and economically as well. So they convinced the Ukrainians, I was not there, so I don't know how difficult was that this is a viable and feasible plan. And they started to do so. But the key element of that concept was that the Russians will accept it. But unfortunately, the Russians decided not to accept it. And of course, it was illegal against the international law and whatever. It was a dirty invasion on behalf of Russia against Ukraine. So no question of that. But the fact is that it was a intellectual misconception, that the Russians will live with this new situation. The Russians will do everything to stop it. They will never let NATO close to their neighborhood, especially not on the playing field as it is in Ukraine and Russia. So the Russians decided to stop it. So this is the story. If we would like to have a peace, longer term, we have to go back to the starting point. So the West has to give up the concept that somehow Ukraine is part of the Western architecture militarily and economically. We have to go back and to say, okay, let's sit down with the Russians and to discuss the future, how to manage the territory between NATO and Russia. Let's start from that point. So that's the first, okay. So if this is the only way to find a long-term solution, it means, of course, that it's impossible that we Westerners will finance a Ukrainian army of 1 million soldiers as it is the plan at this moment. So it's a misconception. The only thing what we can do, and I think we should do, to invest a lot of money, not to the Ukrainian army, but to the European capacities, military industry, defense industry, and the army in Europe, because Europe is simply too weak. And that's what we call peace dividend. You understand what is it, yeah? Peace dividend. Peace dividend means that we never, for long term, we haven't invested into military, so we invested somewhere else, so we cut a dividend, and security was provided by United States. Basically, this is the situation. It's not maintainable anymore, because Trump is a president, he's a businessman. He knows the figures. It's just, it's a bad deal. Yeah. So he will change it, definitely. If we have some money to be spent, we should do it for the European army or the European armies of the member states, and not invest into the Ukrainian army. So that's how I see the army question.
Do you believe we can trust Ursula von der Leyen as the head of the European Commission and Mark Rutte as the head of NATO to do that job for us? With a European army, for example? Okay. I have my doubts.
So on issue of Rutte, you have a better expertise than mine, because you belong to the same national community.
Wasn't a great track record.
I would not like to make any comment on that. Surprisingly, he's doing very well as NATO secretary up to now. I had a chance to see him 3 times, and he was okay. I had a lot confrontation as
I wish he was nicer to you. We were ashamed.
He was brutal on me.
Rude.
And
disrespectful.
And he humiliated the Hungarian nation. He tried to humiliate the Hungarian nation. So
Yes.
He said that Hungary should forced on their knees.
Yeah, shame on him, because he forced our country on its knees.
So I had a lot of confrontation with him, but the fact is that now in his new capacity, he is doing a good job. That's the fact. So I don't know whether the long term...
Miracles do happen.
Probably, God helps, probably.
Prime Minister,
but the second one is von der Leyen. Now, because now we reach a very important point. We have a heavyweight boxer on the corner of the United States to negotiate on tariffs and trade. And we have a lightweight leaders on our corner. Hopeless. We can't win. We can't have a fair deal with that. So that, weight counts.
Prime Minister, one more question on the Ukraine story. One could say you've predicted a lot of what's happening today and where we are today in your discussion with President Zelensky. Are you surprised by the developments, Zelensky in the White House and the escalations this week? Or is that just part of the process? We should expect those ups and downs and, Trump attacking Putin, Trump attacking Zelensky?
Not really, because the real challenge is how the Western countries will acknowledge that they have lost the war. And position of President Trump is easy, because he says America did not lose that war. This war was lost by Biden, not by America. Stupid concept. Yeah. Bad president out, new president is here. We have to face with the reality. It's over. So it's not something humiliating for the United States. Yeah? And responsibility is not part of the discussion, because that went away, gone with the wind together with Biden. So the new president is clean on that. Even more, it's obvious that if he would have been the president at the point when Russia invaded Ukraine, the war has never escalated as it is, or even not have broken. Okay. But the European leadership problem, that's more difficult. Because if you look at the European history, when any leader of any European country must accept that the war is lost, it has a consequence. And they lost the war. And nobody would like to say, guys, we lost the war, but this is the fact. Because if you lose a war, there are some questions coming up to the surface. First, why you were involved into that? If finally you have lost it. Whose decision was that? Second, if the peace is not better than it after the war than it would have been prior to the war, why so many hundreds of thousands has died? Who has a responsibility for that? And what about the money? You invested hundreds of millions and dozens of billions of euros and the dollars into that, and the money is... So many questions of responsibility. And the European leaders would like to avoid that kind of discussion. So that's the reason why they insist on to continue to say that we will win, we will win, we will win, we continue.
To avoid losing face.
So
Prime Minister.
that's how I explain, because at the first moment Hungary was out of that, because my prediction was that will be the end of the story. So at the very first moment we said, guys, stop it, or at least isolate it. Don't escalate. Don't say that it's our war. It's not our war. It's a war between Ukraine and Russia, two Slavic nations, and try to be helpful to stop it and isolate. Don't involve into that.
So what's your advice now?
So my position is an easy one compared with them, because I have the same position now as I was at the beginning of the war. But the position of the other European leaders is very, very difficult.
What can they do, though? How can they get out of this? Not your problem. Not your problem anymore.
It's difficult because they made it difficult. They made it difficult. It's the
So they
consequence of their
contributed
decision.
to that.
Exactly.
So it was not just that they were not able to defend themselves against something bad, but they actively were involved to create the problem.
Prime Minister, I would like to know more about your cultural view and your cultural strategy for Hungary. I'm from Argentina. Javier Milei is leading a cultural revolution, a cultural war. But we have a problem with our university field as is in the rest of the world. So the university field is dominated by leftists, globalists, and the woke agenda. I think that in the USA is the same. So what can we do with that? What did you do with that?
It's a marathon. So there is no solution in a year. So first of all, we have to understand where we are. And you know, it's a tricky thing. The first is that, of course, the universities are dominated everywhere in the Western world by the progressive leftist professors and teachers and so on.
Yeah.
But the kids are not stupid. The kids are not stupid. And the students don't like that kind of bullshit, you know, leftist something which is going on. So first we should deliberate the kids. We should deliberate the students to say, guys, it's not normal that you are so oppressed to have the same opinion on everything, which is a progressive approach or something like that. So freedom, freedom, freedom. So I think we have some chances to give some freedom to the students. That's the first. The second is that if you would like to have some impact on the cultural concept of your nation, of the young generation and the cultural sphere, you have to create institutions.
Okay.
As we have done here. Foundations, clubs, you know, movements. So you have to create another alternative approach to the culture and the essence, basically a sense of the life, because we are speaking about the final sense of the life, you know, what we are thinking about it.
Yes.
So you have to create culture means establishing step one by one institutions. I'm doing that for more than 30 years. And I'm far not yet there. So I can't say it's a beginning process because I moved ahead a lot, but I'm not there. So even in Hungary today, after investing so many energy, political capital, financial capital into that area, we are still have a leftist progressive majority in the
even today.
Wow. I think so. Yeah.
You are.
But it's far the best here compared with other countries of Europe. But the majority is still
And
not
why?
on our side.
Why do you think?
Because it takes time.
Okay.
It takes time. It takes time.
You are a very successful politician. At the moment, you are at some kind of peak. I mean, Donald Trump won, as you predicted. You are in all the TV shows and everything. But at that moment, that's the most dangerous moment in the life of a politician, when you think everything is working for you. Because on the other hand, you're also the most dangerous man in the European Union, because your opponents know Víktor Orban, he's this leader who is encouraging all the rebellions in the countries. You are at the peak of this counter-revolution against this institutional, dysfunctional European Union. Now the question is, you have an election next year. So where's the hidden danger? Where is the great risk for Víktor Orban, and how secure are you that you can prevail the next elections, because your opponents are already building up your enemies?
Okay, it's dangerous to be honest. On that point, anyway. But first of all, the biggest challenge and danger to the nation, to the country, is Ukrainian membership of Ukraine in the European Union, which will destroy everything economically. So this is the biggest challenge and danger. But now the people are aware of that. So it's not a political danger to me. It's a challenge to the country, but politically it's not a danger on me because I was right time saying that, guys, we should stop the war, we should not do what we are doing. So it's okay, like migration. Migration proved to be not a political challenge to me because in a proper time we were able to give a proper answer. Okay. Even if the situation is not easy, it's politics, you can have a proper answer. So even I'm fighting on that. And I think it's now a very difficult race in Hungary. Opposition is strong, but we are strong as well. So it's an open race, and I think we will win.
Who are the world leaders that, besides Trump, that you think see the world the way you see it?
The world leader.
That's a good question.
Are there any?
Difficult to answer.
You say me.
The Argentine president is on the same track. Probably the Indian, okay. Modi probably. It's not easy because they have a different kind of communication set of arguments than we have. But I think what's going on in India is probably based on the same ideas than what we are doing here. China is another story. China is very strong, and it's very difficult to compete with them. For Hungary, there is no need to compete with them because we rather would like to cooperate with them. You know, size counts. It's not a big hope competition for Hungary, so it's better to cooperate. But the Chinese concept of time is different, and in politics, there are two things which really count. The first is the content. Then what is even more is timing. And because the time concept of the Westerners, as we understand, but in China is totally different. So the time perspective is different. Therefore, your move and action is different. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's even difficult to perceive how the Chinese think about the future. But they're very positive on us, so I have just reason to say positive things on them. Japanese are a little bit out of the radar at this moment. And the question is whether the Russians are able to come back. The Russians' way of thinking is very... Don't forget, okay, Hungary is not a Slavic nation. Okay, back one more. The Russians invaded Hungary 4 times in the last 200 years, okay? So I don't have any reason to say any positive things on that, yeah? No. Okay, 4 times, 200 years. Plus, we are not Slavic nation, like the Serbs or the Slovaks or the Czechs, you know, which has the same Slavic cultural basis than the Russians have. So we are different. But at the same time, we have to accept the Russians are rational, behaving rationally. So all the stupid arguments that they are crazy, they blah, 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 it's not true. They are super rational. And they don't have any inclination of suicide. Some countries are. They don't have.
Many,
you know?
in Europe.
But they don't have. So therefore, Russia will be an important player in the future. So my point is that to think that, as I mentioned, the Ukrainian-Russian agreement will lead us to a peace is not true. It's impossible. It's not the way which could lead us to ceasefire. But an American-Russian agreement can help the Russians come back to become again serious player of world politics. And I think it would be good for the world. I don't think it would be bad. Because I think now it's better to have more and more serious, common sense-based, reasonable actor of international politics. Because we have less and less. And unfortunately, we Europeans are out of that circle more and more. And if somebody would like to provide a safe position for the world and to manage the difficult and dangerous things, we need reasonable actors. So that's the reason why we should not look at the Chinese and the Russians and the other Easterners as the Westerners do. It's a mistake.
Can you mend that bridge between Europe and Russia? And can you mend that bridge? Can you go back to how it was? At least
it should. I don't know, but it should. It should. It should go back as it was. You know, in Europe, the competitiveness was based on a very simple structure. Cheap raw materials and energy from Russia, sophisticated technology in the West. Combine the two, and we were competitive.
That's a great model.
Yeah, but okay, this model is out now because of the sanctions. But where is the new model? What we are doing is a suicide thing. So if there would be another model, I would say, okay, forget about the old one. But we don't have a new one, so we need the old one back.
Now, on this point of the shifting...
But nobody would argue in favor of that except me. All the other European leaders would argue, probably Slovaks like me, but all the others would argue against it.
Yeah.
Is it
They are
shifting?
looking for something new, but they are not able to define what is this new thing.
What do you think? I mean, maybe we don't have time for this type of question, but what is your explanation for why these people seem to hate their own continent so much? What's going on in their minds? Because they are on a suicide mission. What's going on?
They have a concept of the human being, the life, Europe, and the politics, which based on to overstep what we have had up to now, and to create something new, a new society. You know, it's the same roots, you know, to create something, don't respect what we have done, but to create something new. And these persons I'm absolutely convinced that those European leaders who argued in favor of mass migration, and you had many anyway, they were honest. They honestly thought that it will be good, because they are looking for a new society, which is a combination of the old Christian society and the invasion of the new Muslim something, and the combination of the two different things could be resulted in something new, which is better than the old one was. So they are always thinking to create something new world. The new human, of course, new man, new women. We conservatives and Christians, we say, guys, it's dangerous. If you would like to imagine the future, the only fixed point is the past, what we have, and the values, what we have, and the experience we have collected. Don't throw it out. So let's continue what we have done in a better way, okay? Because, you know, to reform the things is always good. So you have to have a self-reflection. When you are conservative, it does not mean you are stupid, you know? And then you say to everything, it's okay. No, many things are not okay at all. So we have to change, you know? I'm a Calvinist. In the Calvinist church, it's obvious that the church must be reformed, you know, day by day. You know, that's the normal conservative attitude of the world. Okay.
Michael, we'll have to come back and have a longer discussion.
But these guys think that they have a knowledge about something new, and they would like to lead us to this new thing. That's the reason why they really would be angry to hear that you think that they don't love their country. They love their country and they imagine a better world for their country. You know? But from our point of view, it's just stupid, too risky. It's, you know, it's an impertinent, it's an unrespectful behavior to the parents and the grandparents. You know, just to deny it and throw it out.
Has your thinking on this changed? Because you've had a very long political career. We were talking about the kids earlier at the universities who. Maybe they start out libertarian, they become more traditionalist or something like that. Has your thinking on these questions changed much over 30 years?
Definitely, yes. Definitely, yes. First of all, when I was young, in the 80s, it was obvious that liberals fight for freedom.
Wow.
And freedom is the most important issue, yeah? So I'm a freedom fighter, street fighter, whatever, so freedom. And it took 2 decades to understand that now, slowly but surely, the liberals became the enemy of the freedom. So something bad in the concept, so we have to rethink everything. So then I have got some help from the God as well to understand that this is bad and this is good, and I reshape my ideas and reshape my program and so on. But the core is unchanged. The core is freedom. I desperately believe that freedom is the best thing. And the God has given the freedom for us to make good things. So let's be so simple. That's all. That's all. And if you continue, if you follow that track, you will win.
So the freedom stays solid, but there's a changing conception of freedom.
Because sorry, I came from a dictatorship. Freedom means to be free from something, from the communists, from Soviet Union, you know. to be free from something. But I realized that after several years, it's not enough, because freedom is for something. So it's not enough to say that freedom is against something. Freedom, it must be for something, you know? You have to do something. Yeah. And then it's easy to understand that in the human being's lives, if you would like to have a real valuable life, you have to admit that there are things which are more important than yourself. This is the key point. This is a turning point. That was my turning point. There are things which are more important than my own personal life. This is the family, the God, and the nation. And the best way of life to serve the things which are more important than you are. Be humble and serve the more important things.
This is why you moved.
When you understand that, you become conservative.
Yeah.
that's so simple.
So, Prime Minister, we had an issue in the United States. Last question. We had an issue in the United States recently where we were trying to, in the prior administration, we know who the president is now, but we were trying to get answers from we know who the president is now. I'm thinking European. We know who the president is now, but when we were going to the previous presidency, we were trying to figure out what their theory of government was, and we realized that it wasn't Joe Biden's thinking. In fact, we weren't really sure who the president was when Joe Biden was in office. Do you get the sense that Joe Biden was really running the U.S. government during those years?
We have never saw that. We have never saw that.
Wow.
Any more questions? Because to raise the next question and to answer that's the most dangerous thing.
So then who was?
Thank you, Prime Minister.
It's a philosophical misconception. Another one.
Prime Minister, thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. And thank you for...
No, that was my pleasure.
That's great.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you to visit Hungary. Thank you to come to CPEC. And we lost our precious position, what we have done, because for 2 decades, Hungary was an island of and laboratorium at the same time of the conservative politics. But now United States taken over the lead. So now we are not as spectacular and spectacular as we were.
Trump
We need the rest of Europe to follow.
We have studied well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime
Thank you
Minister.
very much.
No quiero que cierres este video sin antes contarte que mi más reciente libro, titulado Generación Idiota, ya se encuentra disponible en las más importantes librerías de toda América y de España también. Además, podés encontrarlo a través de Amazon en el link que te dejo en la descripción de este video. Mi trabajo se financia única y exclusivamente a partir de las donaciones libres y voluntarias de aquellos que valoran mi trabajo. Si quisieras colaborar económicamente conmigo, te invito a hacerlo uniéndote en mi comunidad de Patreon, siguiendo el link que se encuentra en la descripción de este video, o bien uniéndote a la comunidad de YouTube haciendo clic en el botón Unirse. Si no pudieras colaborar económicamente, no te preocupes, hay muchas otras formas de ayudar. Por ejemplo, difundiendo este video, poniéndole like, dejando tu comentario, suscribiéndote a este canal y activando la campanita.